styles.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and boy, I don't know about you, but we might have more schmucks today than we have topics to discuss, but we can go ahead and fold that in. All right. Joining us is, of course, our troika, still not in Grosse Pointe, of attorneys Joel Sklar, Steve Fishman, and Bill Seikaly, who is in Grosse Pointe, waiting patiently for the other two. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We have returning from her trip after saying Arrivederci Roma, Nancy Derringer, veteran journalist. We have co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, storm clouds at the Trump hush money trial. Seems like a lot of them going on this week, and in fact, it seems as though Trump's muttering profanities under his breath has been audible enough for the judge to be miffed about it. What's the latest coming out of New York?
I have a brain scar that will never go away after hearing that Trump opened the door to his suite after inviting Stormy Daniels to have dinner with him in satin pajamas. I mean, the sight, I'm used to seeing Trump only in his baggy suits with the tie and those awful golf clothes that he wears. But the idea of him in satin pajamas, I think as a woman, it just blows my brain.
It's strangely arousing. I know. It's,
Well, did you hear what she said to him? She said, "Mr. Hefner wants his pajamas back.
Right.
Change your clothes."
Very funny.
Right. The Playboy Mansion called, and they
They need their pajamas back.
So on that, yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I think what we've seen, it's astonishing when you contrast the witnesses who are the individual people that dealt with this guy with the people who basically are coming in and really sinking him, the ones who are coming in with the checks and the things of that nature. You really realize what a complete sleazebag he is. And you realize another thing, too, and we were talking about it in the gym this morning, how any woman can vote for this guy when it's as obvious, as plain as day, what he thinks about females is just beyond my comprehension that anybody, I don't care whether they're white people or black people or purple people or old people, how can a female vote for somebody who treats women the way he treats them? The sleaziness part of it, to me, is the overwhelming story that's coming from this. Who knows what's going to happen in terms of a verdict? But when you watch and you see the kind of behavior, it's not all that different from Harvey Weinstein. It's really not. Even though she took pains to say, I'm not accusing him of rape. He didn't force me, but he didn't force you, kind of. But by the same token, he used the exact same ploy. Come up to my suite. Maybe I can get you on The Apprentice. And what was Weinstein promising women or assuring women, I'll help your careers and this and that and the other. So to me, what the overwhelming thing of her testimony was just to show literally what a complete sleazebag he is. And I should say one other thing. The judge, it appeared, was a little bit miffed at the detail that they went into. And I think we might have discussed this before. If his lawyers were in a position where they could say, yeah, the sex happened, but that stuff wouldn't have been admissible. It had never come out. But the problem is, if as a defense lawyer, if your defense is, among other things, there never was any sex, it never happened, it seems to me the prosecutor's got the right to bring out certain things. What kind of aftershave was there, whether he was wearing those fucking pajamas, whatever it was, to bolster the notion that it happened. Because if it didn't happen, she's got a hell of an imagination, right? Because she came up with so many facts.
Well, given his contempt for the Chinese, I'm pretty sure it wasn't high karate. But that question about stipulating, Steve, I mean, the defense went to pains not to stipulate anything, and what you're saying is it kind of then bit them in the behind.
It did. The point is, it wouldn't even be a matter of stipulating. I mean, when you have a case, if you're trying a case and both sides agree to what some fact is, you don't need a stipulation. You just both agree you're not going to bring it up. The prosecution wouldn't have asked anything at all, in my opinion. And if I were the judge, I wouldn't have let them ask anything at all if there was a concession that, yes, she came up there and yes, there was sex. The problem when you're dealing with a guy like Trump as a lawyer, I can take it one step further. That the female lawyer who cross-examined, from what I understand, from what I've read and heard, she's the best lawyer of all of them out there. She's supposed to be a terrific defense lawyer, cross-examiner. The problem was, I guarantee you, he told her, be aggressive, scream at her, blah, 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 blah. That's not the way to cross-examine a witness until you have to. You don't start out screaming at the witness, but he probably insisted on that. And this is the problem of having to deal with a guy like him, which brings us back to the original point, which is, why would anybody take his case?
All right, Bill.
Yeah, I a couple of points. One, I think everything Steve said is right. I'd go a little further. I think the defense raised the issue. They could have simply said the sex is not relevant at the very beginning during the opening. Instead, they went to great length to deny it.
Exactly.
Which took what was arguably an irrelevant subject and made it relevant during the trial. They opened the door. They got stuck with it. That's number one. Number two, none of us really know how the jury, and they're the only important people, perceived her testimony. That'll come out later. But I really agree that with Steve that the cross-examination, a great cross-examiner, what she did on the first day, she should have stood up, made the 2 points that she had, and sat down. Yeah. That's great cross-examination. Instead, she gave them another day for Stormy to come up with all these great quips and quote, didn't you make money? Yeah, just like Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
It's stuff that you don't, as a cross-examined a lot of people in my life. You don't ever want that stuff coming out.
Bill, I think she took a sad song and made it better.
Yeah.
Alan.
But hold on, can I make one last
point? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I think this is, for me, the most important. What a sad time in our country's history that this is the dominating story of today's news.
All day long.
Going on in this world right now. Everything that's going on in the Middle East, everything that's going on in Ukraine, all the issues that's going on in this country. And we're talking about a sleazeball, and Steve's too kind to him.
Right. And an election year, too.
Who wants to have sex with a porn star, brag about it privately, deny it publicly, and then use it to raise money. Where the hell are we in this country?
I know.
And Bill, you're not even mentioning the Met Gala. Alan.
I was watching CNN, and some of the lawyers, one of the federal prosecutors, was analyzing and going, "Oh my God, what a blow! She admitted she hates Trump." It's like, I don't know. Maybe the
watching cable news. It's gonna break your brain. Go ahead.
Look, any lawyer knows that if you have a witness and denying it would not be legitimate. The jury would see through it. What you want them to do is say, yeah, I hate him, and be done with it. She took all the steam out of it. She was wonderful on that. That's exactly what you want to witness.
That's what I thought. I thought they were saying, "Oh my God, that's what a blow to the prosecution." I'm like, of course she hates him. He's a hateable guy. I mean, half of America hates him. Doesn't just dislike him, but hates him. She's
Well,
Wait,
among,
But most of America doesn't get called horseface by him. I mean,
Yeah.
he's done some things that I think will come into evidence.
I want to hear from the two women, from Nancy and Barb, what you think about what I said. This business about how do we explain the number of females in the country that are willing to vote for a guy like this?
Well, I just want to add that you're absolutely right about that. And I know that sometimes you and I sound like a mutual admiration society because you're always saying, I agree with Nance. And then I'm always saying, I totally agree with Steve. But you are absolutely dead on. And the detail that she came up with in this story is, I mean, that has never happened to me, but I know a lot of women that some similar event has happened to them. I'm thinking of this woman, Rose, that I used to work with, this spicy West Virginia girl who, goes out on the first date with a guy and they're getting along like gangbusters. And it's Saturday night. And she's like, hey, you want to come up and watch like the opening of Saturday Night Live? And he's like, sure. And they go up there and they're sitting on the couch and they're not smooching or anything. And she goes to use the bathroom and she comes out and he is has undressed to his underpants and he's laying stretched out on the couch. And, she's, unlike Stormy Daniels, he didn't have anything to offer, like a seat on a spot in The Apprentice. So she just said, get out, I have a gun. And he put his clothes on and left. But that kind of thing happens a lot. And the fact that she's able to remember so much of it and so much just excellent detail that she snooped in his shaving kit and found that he has Old Spice. Old Spice and Pert Plus shampoo because he's a cheap ass, and he's and that all that stuff is
please let it be a hotel sample. And by the way, Nancy, was that SNL episode the one that Ryan Gosling hosted? Because I can understand why the guy might have taken his clothes off, but
yeah, exactly.
There's a thing around the social media right now, asking women to choose if they're out in the woods by themselves and they see a bear, or see a man. What do you prefer? And overwhelming women are saying bears.
Yeah, I'd rather meet the bear. Right.
I'd much rather meet the bear. And then the stories come out. So no, I don't understand women who are supporting Donald Trump, but the women that I have met that are supporting Donald Trump, it's easy for them because they don't believe the liberal media.
Yeah, well, everybody's lying. Everybody's lying.
Yeah.
It's just
everybody's lying, and they believe that Stormy it was in it for the money, and no one even really denies that she did it. And she's not a horse face; she's a very beautiful woman. But it doesn't matter. They can excuse this stuff over and over and over again, and it fills me with horror, and it just makes me really not understand my sisters in the world.
I did not. I'll be very quick here. I did not miss the irony of, according to her ex-best friend, Melania's reaction to this was, the porn hooker is making money off of this. It's like it takes one sex worker to know another sex worker. That's all I can say.
Guys, listen, I just got a text from Marjorie Taylor Greene who wants to know how Nancy and Barb could possibly side with Fishman over the sisterhood.
So
wait a minute, Bill. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene's filing a petition to have Nancy and Barb removed from the show because she got nowhere with Mike Johnson in the House.
Good luck with that,
Joel.
One point, there were two women who testified who worked for Trump yesterday, both of whom love him. And I think their testimony is going to be critical. They kind of let they love this man. And they talked about his micromanaging, how he knew every check, how he signed every check, how he knew everything that was going on. That testimony may be dry, but it's critical. And I thought they did a great job. I thought it was really quite telling that these women are in tears. I apologize, Steve. They were in tears, they love Trump and they testified truthfully against him. I think that's what
I agree with that 100%. That's what I was kind of trying to say at the beginning. I really think had the government presented this case without Stormy Daniels and without Cohn, the case would have been dry as hell. It wouldn't have had all this enthusiasm. But that's really the evidence against him with respect to the charged crime. He's not on trial for rape. He's not on trial for being an asshole. He's on trial for very kind of technical stuff. And Joel, I think I got to believe the prosecutors are going to get up there and start with them and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you saw these people who had worked there for all these years, and they obviously love him. But what did they say? Not how did they react? Not did they cry? Look what they said about his involvement in the everyday life. And they're going to come in here and tell you he had no idea. He's involved in whether he's buying the Old Spice. I mean, anything that costs 50 cents, he's involved in. And that I think you're making the point that I think could easily be made without the two of them, without the spectacular crap. You've got a case. The question is whether the spectacular crap gets one or two or three jurors to say, these people are assholes. I'm not going to convict because I'm not relying on them.
Did anybody
I think Biden. I think
ahead.
Biden could beat him on the Old Spice issue.
Did anybody hear the story that Jen Psaki told a few days ago on her show or something? I just read the story about it where she said that after the election in 2016, it's a tradition. The outgoing administration invites members of the incoming administration in, and they kind of brief them. They kind of show them around, and this is where you find this, blah, blah, blah. And so Jen Psaki was in communications, was showing Hope Hicks around. And Hope said something like, how do you get the president to sign off on all the communications that comes out of this office? And she said, well, you don't have him sign off on everything. She said, if you're issuing a proclamation that it's World Pancake Day, that's obviously something that can be handled by the staff, and he doesn't need to initial that. Okay. And Hicks's reaction was, that's not Mr. Trump's way. He approves and looks at every goddamn thing that comes out of any organization that he runs for.
Particularly pancakes.
Especially pancakes. So there you go. So I mean,
that's probably.
Yeah.
Well, so. he was micromanaging which fast food to serve, like when sports teams would show up.
Right. Exactly.
So there you go. Allan, I think we've got some video not only about Trump, but also just how the conservative media is blaming the trial and the maladies that Trump is facing on liberals.
Stormy claims that she blacked out in this tryst with Trump, but she wasn't on any drugs or alcohol. You blacked out without drugs or alcohol. Some of us call that sleeping. Now, it could be that you really blacked out after having sex with Trump, which is a compliment. Truly, he screwed the brains out of her.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Now we also have. Are we going to move on? Or
yeah.
We also have Kristi Noem here.
Everyone in conservative media had their knives out for Kristi Noem. In the bowels of Newsmax, Eric Bolling tried his best to throw her a lifeline.
Governor, I've also written a couple of books, and I know how the process works. You write some chapters. You don't write the whole book at once. You write a chapter or two. Mm-hmm. You send it to the editors, and they edit. They read it. They add. They subtract. And here's my question. The editor. Mm-hmm. The editor. Was she possibly a plant, a liberal plant?
A liberal plant editor, Eric. She wrote the book.
Yeah. I think it's really hysterical because there's another little part where she made up meeting with Kim Jong-un, and I think they took that out of the book. So when she's interviewed on all these shows, she goes, "I don't discuss who I meet with." They kept saying, "You never met with him." I don't discuss who I meet with.
Oh man. And I think we got one more about a fellow conservative there, Allan.
Right. This is about the Boy Scouts. We're now the Scouts of America.
As you all were saying. What happens to institutions in America and really all over the world is patriotic people start these institutions and the left must destroy it. It's a sad day when young boys can't learn how to be strong men. We've wrecked it. Actually, they wrecked it.
Okay, I don't want to break character. Young man who was sued. This guy was sued by another fella for non-consensually grabbing his dick in 2022. Yeah. That only got dropped after a reported $480,000 settlement.
Well, I mean, this talk about how possibly could people be loyal to someone like Trump. You've got a judge in Florida, a Trump appointee, who has decided to indefinitely postpone the classified documents case. How is this even possible at this extent? And is there anything that Jack Smith, the special counsel, can go ahead and do in order to have her remove Bill?
Yeah, one, I mean, he could bring a motion, which will not be granted, to disqualify her. Getting rid of a federal judge is damn near impossible to do. And so I think as a practical, I mean, he could bring a writ of mandamus, do some other things, none of which is likely to occur. It would be interesting to see if the circuit would do something about it, but it's unlikely. It's virtually unheard of. And this is a sad commentary. The problems that were created here were created by the judge. She ends up raising an issue regarding jury instructions that gets everybody bogged down in a bunch of motions. You don't do jury instructions until after you've decided the motions in limine and all the other stuff. This is ridiculous. It appears to me that this was part of her plan to not want to hear this stuff. She is either incredibly biased or incredibly incompetent, or a combination thereof.
Yeah. Or purchased outright.
I'm sorry?
Steve.
Or purchased outright. Well, I mean, didn't Trump appoint her?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. She's doing what doing what she is paid
What
to
a
do.
return.
Yeah.
Well, these days, right now, Barb, it's actually more advantageous to buy than lease. So with the rates. So, Steve.
So here's the best discussions I've heard about this were on MSNBC with Andrew Weissman and a couple of other people who were Fed prosecutors or significant defense lawyers. Jack Smith had to make a choice. He knew going in that if he brought the case in Florida, it's a 1 in 3 choice. Okay, 1 in 3. There's only 3 judges, so you got a 33% chance of getting her, and her reputation preceded her. Everybody knew what she was. He could have brought the case in D.C. because there was some tangential stuff that occurred in D.C., but in general, it's the practice of federal prosecutors to bring the case in the district where most of the action took place. Unfortunately, that district was in Florida. With respect to what she is, again, it's kind of like asking us what the jury is going to do. We don't know her. None of the 3 of us have ever been in front of her, but it appears to be, it sounds like it's kind of a combination of the 2 things that Bill said. On the one hand, she has very little experience. I'm not going to say she's incompetent, but she has very little experience for someone to be promoted to the federal bench. On the other hand, a guy like Andrew Weissman, who's certainly no wild lefty or anything like that, he came as close as he could to say that he thinks that this is not that she's taking money, Barb, not like that, but that she's just out to corrupt the system, and that's what she's doing. And she's going to guarantee he won't go to trial beforehand because, of course, this is the most solid case. This case is the lock of the year. There's no real factual defense to the case. So I think I kind of agree with what I heard from the lawyers who have been paying attention.
Well, I mean, Anne, who listens to the show, well, you've got quite a bit of an echo now.
All right.
God's intervening.
Let's get.
Well, Bill, when you mentioned that, Bill, you heard God's intervening twice, so you're not saying that he's a polytheist, is he? All right, Allan, do you want to look into that?
I'm working on it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Okay. Well, Joel, I think that might have been you. Is it?
Joel's fault.
Joel's got it.
Never Joel's fault.
Well, one of our listeners, Anne.
It is Joel. It's Joel.
It's Joel.
We'll have to figure out. Joel, you want to sign out and come back in? Maybe that'll. Why don't you do that? Go ahead.
It's Joel with the extra microphone in the library for you Clue fans. Well, and one of our regular listeners sort of implied something about where Judge Canna went to law school. Yes, she went to the University of Michigan Law School, but I think she learned her stupid at Duke University, which is where she was an undergrad. But anyway, that's
I
my
thought
bet.
they were going to say she was a Cooley grad. So, but
No, that's Mr.
she's
Cohn. Only Mr.
Michigan.
Cohn is a Cooley grad.
yeah.
Well, it looks like this is not the only trial involving Trump that is a bit precarious. The Georgia Appeals Court has agreed to hear Trump's request to disqualify DA Fannie Lewis in the election interference case. So this one, I think, Steve, you had said was even more slam dunky than the classified documents case.
I thought this case was an absolute slam dunk because you had his own words and you could use his own words against him. And I made her my schmuck of the week at least once, maybe twice. For the life of me, I'll never figure it out. I'll never understand how someone in the position that she was in could have done something as stupid as what she did. And this is we're reaping the whirlwind now. The Court of Appeals did it. Who knows who's sitting on that panel? I don't know. I don't think it's really going to get anywhere. But she opened it all up, and he's one of the luckiest human beings that's ever walked the face of the earth. Trump. It's unbelievable. He had James Comey hand him the election in 2016 with that crap a couple of weeks before. And now all these different things that are happening. He had Merrick Garland, who I made schmuck of the week. Why? For delaying bringing these charges for all this time. It's astounding how you would think that luck and being a good person would go hand in hand. And here it's the exact opposite. The bigger asshole you are, the luckier you are.
I keep waiting for his luck to run out too, because I figure it can't go on forever. I mean, but maybe it can. Maybe this is divine, like, judgment of the American experiment. Like, God is fucking with us, but I don't want to go there. So.
I think it'll catch
you
up.
Did already.
Nobody has infinite luck. I'm sorry, but it's interesting. The boyfriend in the Atlanta case who stepped down, I can't remember his name now, but he was interviewed on ABC News, and he was saying, well, love happens in, I mean, it was such a bullshit answer. He's like, love happens in offices. There are office romances in America. It's like, you have this fucking most important case, one of the most important cases in America, and I'm sorry, you have to watch out because you're going to get blindsided. Any lawyer
couldn't keep it in your
that.
pants until until it was done. It's like, go figure. So
Allan, our people will never understand this, but like after 1517, the monastery became kind of passé. So I think it's important to understand.
Look, I've known Steve for a few years. I kind of smiled when he said this. I remember our youthful indiscretions, and I remember how
spill the tea, Bill. We want to hear it.
May have influenced some of the decisions that we made, because I took phone calls from multiple women when I worked with Steve. But did
you have a party line, Bill?
No, I happen to work in the same office as Steve, and multiple women all of whom I admired couldn't figure out what they saw in Steve.
Here we are again.
And so, I have to tell you, I never look this. What Trump is doing, people get in more trouble over sex or the desire to be sexually attractive or the desire to be, to be with someone than anything else that I can think of. I've seen more stupid things done as a result of desire.
No,
just so we know, none of those phone calls were coming from porn stars.
Nope.
Nope. As long as we've established that.
They were all actually amazingly intelligent, generally lawyers and other women who for the life of me, I wanted to become like Steve Fishman because I couldn't figure out why he was attracting them. I mean, I thought he was cute, but not that cute.
Bill, were any of them librarians? No
comment.
Into that.
No comment.
Okay. All right.
So should we take a little commercial break on that note?
I think we should take
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Well, for all this talk about Trump being, sort of Teflon-esque, Indiana had its primary, and Trump did, unsurprisingly, win. But he only won with 78% of the vote. Nikki Haley, whose campaign is moribund, actually still scored 22%. Is this just sort of an uncommitted or a protest vote in, of all places, Indiana?
Well,
Nancy, you having the most experience with Indiana.
I should speak first because I lived there for 20 years. And Indiana is not even close to being a purple state. It is a red state. And it always amuses me when there's a statewide election there and some Republican tries to blame Democrats for whatever problems the state is having at the moment, since the Democrats have not swung any kind of weight in the state of Indiana since Evan Bayh was governor, and he was barely a Democrat. So anyway, I think this is interesting because I put that result up against the recall of the Ottawa Impact commissioner in Ottawa County, Michigan. And I believe there was also a recall, or maybe it was just a regular election in Delta County in the UP that turned out 4 MAGA county commissioners there as well. And so I think this is interesting. I think this is a storm cloud on the horizon, maybe, and it may sail right over Mr. Lucky like everything else. But if people are bothering to go to the polls in Indiana and pull the lever for somebody that isn't even running anymore, I'd be a little concerned if I were on Trump's team. So there.
Thank you, Kenneth, for the correction. It is pronounced Fani Willis. It's not like the band song "The Wait," which is, of course, "Take a Load Off Fanny." So just
the Jewish version is Fanny. But I think what we're seeing also in Indiana. I mean, there's still people who are hoping that maybe Trump gets convicted and he gets booted out, and Nikki Haley's in the wings. There's still people giving her money. She still hasn't committed to backing Trump. I think there's still some hope that somehow he'll get convicted and the party will say, forget it. Not likely to happen, but it's possible. So.
Okay, Barb?
I've talked to several family members of mine that are much more conservative than me, and they hate Donald Trump, but they're not voting for Biden, and they all like Nikki Haley. And you will see that in that age group. That like late 30s, early 50s, that are tired of the whole thing, and they're really tired of very old people running for office, and they see Nikki Haley as a reasonable person. And again, they're conservative, so they're but,
well, it is as a boomer, and I know that probably a majority of the people in this group here are boomers, maybe with the exception of Generation X or Saeed over there. But I'm kind of, and I don't ever accept generational guilt. I mean, when people say to me, you boomers fucked up everything because you looted the treasury and blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, I missed that meeting. Okay. When we all got together and decided to do this, I was doing something else that day. But I will admit to feeling a certain amount of generational shame and embarrassment that this is kind of our last act on the national stage, that we've got, 2 old fucking geezers who are having a rematch of something that should have been settled 4 years ago. I mean, I voted for Biden in 20, believing that he was going to be a one-term president and that he would fix what he could and go out on, being carried on the shoulders of heroes, but
Vikings to Valhalla.
Yes, Vikings to Valhalla. Exactly. I was thinking of those centurions that carried Jackie Presser into the UAW convention, or no, the Teamsters convention in Vegas back at Caesar's Palace. But anyway.
Well, speaking for my generation, Nancy, I mean, we liked our candidates young, like, this guy named Dutch Reagan.
Yeah.
So, but what about a third party candidate? I mean, we have someone like, of course, Robert Kennedy Jr., who just admitted that he has a parasitic brain worm and does have memory loss.
I'm sorry. I saw that headline in the New York Times a couple days ago. It said, I tweeted it somewhere. It said something like, RFK says he has a dead worm in his brain. And I'm like, how can life get any better than this? Really?
I looked at that same headline, Nancy, in the New York Times.
Yeah.
I thought it was part of the Borowitz report. It had to be part of the Borowitz report. And so I clicked it because I love Andy Borowitz.
Right.
It wasn't. It was a real New York Times article.
It was, and it came right after the one. Let me call it up here. Or is it what this said? Kristi Noem suggests Biden's dog should have been killed too.
We have Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is running for re-election.
Oh, well, great.
So
wonderful. That's what we need. Just what we need. Anyway.
I love Bernie with all my heart, but honest to God, sit down, Bernie.
Right.
God damn.
Well, I don't.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says doctors found a dead worm in his brain. So,
yeah. Well, not to go ahead and not to encroach on anybody's potential schmuck, but Mike Collins, Republican of Georgia, said about RFK Jr., quote, "You either die a Kennedy with a hole in the brain or live long enough to become a Kennedy with a hole in the brain."
Oh,
so
what a guy. What a guy. Yeah.
And you thought all the poets were from the Northeast.
Right.
Shout out to Brother Reed. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. So, but getting back to the elections, it looks like Michigan 13 has a bit of an issue where candidate Adam Hollier has conceded that some election petition signatures may have been forged. This, of course, due to a complaint that had been lodged by his his opponent, incumbent Sri Thanadar. Do you think that this is going to be something that's going to adversely impact Hollier's candidacy and possible election? Yeah, Alan.
I think it is. I've seen some of the signatures. I mean, it's interesting because I've asked candidates, like, how can you tell? And you see like the same handwriting, the same pen, the same dates, the same swirls on signatures. They have one of them, at least one of them is Teresa Baldus from the Free Press's name is on there, and she says she never signed it. There's a lot of, I think there's quite a few there. And a lot of these candidates don't pay attention. You have to scrutinize, particularly, I mean, some of these people are collecting signatures are getting $10, $15 a signature. Yeah. And it's so easy to sign, get 20 and you make $200 for the day. It's happening a lot. It happened with 5 candidates in 2022, Republican candidates for governor. It happens a lot. It's a scam, and candidates have to pay attention to that.
Why does this keep happening? I mean, I thought that the events of the Republican primary, the washout of James Craig and Ryan, half the hopefuls got washed out by bad signatures. Why does this keep happening? I mean, what do these? I know that a lot of places have to, or a lot of candidates have to rely on paid signature gathering, just because that's the reality of But I just don't understand how these companies that offer this keep getting away with it, or time and time again.
It's criminal.
Why is it the reality that they have to pay to get signatures? Does it say something about the viability of your candidacy when you can't get supporters?
Well, it's sometimes it's a weather issue. I remember, because the primary was fairly early. I don't remember all the facts of this, but I remember saying that it's hard to get signatures, like for instance, in the wintertime, because you stand in public areas like Eastern Market or the Ice Festival or whatever, and you ask passersby to sign, right? And sometimes that's easier than other times. But at the same time, I mean, what was the Voters Not Politicians? Yeah, Voters Not Politicians, Katie Fahey's group. They did the entire thing on with no paid gatherers, and that testifies to the popularity of that cause, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe, who knows? I don't really understand it.
Those are people with a mission,
Yeah.
and they were. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without somebody, and then you have to be careful that you're not double signing.
Right.
Like that one in particular, I knew. I can't walk into the Royal Oak Farmers Market without meeting they stand there and wait. And I appreciate that, doing that, because it's awful. It's an awful job. It's hard. It's raining on you. It's snowing on you. People blow past you or they yell at you. But you can usually tell the
I yelled at two guys in the Eastern Market a few weeks ago, the RFK Jr. guy and the act the tax. Ma'am, do you want to pay no property tax? And I said, fuck no!
The ones that got me were the ones that wanted a part-time legislature. So
that's a big one.
And that was just terrible. And I got called a communist like 5 times a day. It was awesome. But it's an awful job.
I yelled at the guy in downtown Ferndale who was petitioning for Recep Erdogan in Turkey. It got really ugly.
But no one wants to do that job unless it's really a cause like Voters Not Politicians. It's you have people. It's like I'm this guy's wife and he's running for judge, and it was maybe it was.
Ooh, here's an interesting one. Kenneth is asking, possibly Adam Hollier's campaign was probably infiltrated by paid minions from the Shree campaign, who might have paid $20 a signature over the 10 that was being get. Old school politics trick. Thank you, Kenneth. That was something we had to talk about.
Who the Republican guy, the wealthy guy? He looked like this, who got booted off. You remember? You know what I'm talking about? He was like the mad scientist.
Was it Taylor Johnson?
You're thinking of Perry Johnson.
Perry Johnson.
Yeah, Perry Johnson.
Right. Yeah. He was. He was great. Yeah. He didn't look like that.
No, that's it. Not only do it look, that was.
I think he looked more like that.
That was the great. That was the greatest setup.
If I were Perry Johnson's,
that was like two-part authentication.
Yeah. If I were Perry Johnson's late in life children and wife, I would be furious at dear old dad. How many millions of dollars did he flush away running for president? In Iowa with that stupid bus, and it was just ridiculous.
All these guys, Sandy Penciller, who's running as a Republican for the U.S. Senate, that guy is blowing. Nobody's giving him money. I can't imagine he's blowing all his money. These guys have nothing to do.
Did you see his ad? He's bringing up Hillary Clinton.
Rogers. Yeah.
It's okay, Nancy. It's okay. The stock market is up under Biden, so they're doing fine.
I just got a text from Perry's wife who says, Nancy, you're wrong. Getting him away from the house was all we could do. We were happy to double the amount.
Yeah.
Now, see how much you're missing, Steve, from not having a smartphone? No one's texting you the way they text Bill. Something to consider. Okay, so this week Israel invaded Rafah, and this was after Hamas had accepted a ceasefire and a hostage proposal. And now it seems as though the Biden administration has said that they would go ahead and suspend munitions shipments to Israel if it escalated to a quote-unquote major invasion. There is a State Department report coming out on the conflict, which stops short of claiming that Israel has misused, as a violation of international law, American munitions in Gaza, despite the fact that Biden admitted it in an interview. Allan.
Just for a clarification, and there's so many different versions out there in terms of the negotiations, which I followed very closely last weekend, then Monday. The reports that I saw, and maybe someone can correct me if they've seen something different, is that the negotiations were going back and forth. They looked very promising. And then on Sunday, it looked like forget about it. Part of it was the Hamas was saying we can maybe give you 33 people, but we don't know how many are going to be alive, how many are going to be dead. And then Hamas on Monday said, we accept the agreement. And then Israel said, wait a minute, you've made all these amendments, which we don't agree to. And I don't know what to believe. I mean, both sides are, to be honest, are not, the leadership is the most not trustworthy.
I think, Allan, that it wasn't bilateral. I think what Hamas had accepted was actually an Egyptian and Qatari proposal. So you're right. I mean, I think that the amendment was perhaps something that was more in the hands of the mediators than it was necessarily the Israeli proposal that Hamas. I don't think Hamas accepted the Israeli proposal. You're right.
Right. It was a mutual. It was it was a shit show, and in the end, both sides sabotaging and trying to outsmart each other, and in the end, it's like, same
so
shit.
on our generation's David Frost interviewing Netanyahu, meaning Dr. Phil. Netanyahu said that he would still go forward, even going it alone, if the United States suspended weapons. Is this posturing, or is this something more? I mean, I think Ben Gvir, the former security minister, actually accused Biden by saying Hamas heart Biden in his latest tweet. Steve.
Right.
Is it a ploy? Everything that Bibi Netanyahu does is a ploy. He's never serious about anything other than one thing, his own future.
Yeah.
And whatever he thinks needs to be done to preserve his place in Israel and to keep himself out of prison, he's going to do. We cannot make the mistake of assuming that the man is acting based on principle, because he doesn't know what principles are. Okay? The same applies to the Hamasniks. The Hamas, they agree to this, they agree to that. They're terrorists. They don't agree to shit, quite frankly. Their charter said they want to exterminate every Jew there is. So who are we kidding? What matters here, it seems to me, is finally I'm seeing, at least what you read in the Times, there's more stirring in Israel itself, although the Israelis are still shocked back from October 7th, but there's more stirring about it. And at the end of the day, this whole business about hostages, if you're going to talk about hostages and you're going to talk about a resolution, you're releasing every goddamn hostage. Who are we kidding? You're going to we're going to release the dead people. You're going to release 85-year-old people. You're going to release all the hostages if you're going to try to do something. At the end of the day, it seems to me, and I'm interested in what you guys say, I don't think either side is serious. I really don't.
I
agree.
Steve couldn't be more right, and that's a fundamental problem. But things are escalating, and it's.
I mean, Bill, I'm sorry. One clarification. Steve being right is not a fundamental problem. Okay, go.
Steve is right that is the fundamental problem. Neither side, the leadership of neither side wants peace, and for their own reasons. But things are escalating, and it's terrifying. I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but in East Jerusalem, at the UN headquarters for the UN aid for the Palestinian people, there was a mass demonstration, I understand, organized by a local Israeli politician, in which Israeli flags were flying heavily, and they were chanting, "Burn down the UN." They actually set fire to it. Police were there and let it go. This is the same organization that recognized the state of Israel. They are in large part responsible for the creation of the state of Israel, but now a large part of the population is talking about burning them down because they feel like they're being unfair, because they're trying to protect the Palestinian population in Gaza. And by the way, there's been no aid that has moved in to Gaza in the last 3 days, which is just devastating. So I absolutely agree with Steve. He can talk about Netanyahu. I'll tell you, Hamas is playing a game for their own sake. They like the fact that the world is finally acknowledging the existence of the Palestinian people, and they're playing their own game. The Palestinian people are the people who are getting the short end of this stick because nobody seems to be worried about them.
Allan.
I agree with Bill. I think what we're seeing is, and I've said this before, is that Israel has the military might. So Israel's fighting on one level, and they're killing and they're bombing. And the more they're doing that, the leverage for Hamas goes up. They're seeing, they're fighting on a PR, it's military versus PR, and there's a lot of leverage in the PR. We're seeing it on the campuses. Here, we're seeing it on the pushback in the whole world. And that's where the fight is going. So, Netanyahu says we've got to destroy Hamas. And the more the more the war goes on, the more Hamas gets, more and more points. And it's just fucked up.
But the Israeli army is causing that problem. I mean, if this would be different if they were going in with strategic strikes and going after Hamas military operations. This is a conscious decision. We're not only going to eliminate Hamas as a military force, we're going to destroy the infrastructure in Gaza and force them to start all over again. So there's nothing. I think it's doing incredible recruiting for the far right of the Islamic terrorist organizations. If they go in and kill your family, destroy your homes, guess what? You're likely to become radicalized. So this PR problem that you're talking about, Allan, was created not by Hamas,
but they're not totally. But I agree with you. I agree with you. But they're not. Hamas isn't totally innocent either. They could negotiate. They could say, okay, here's the hostages. Let's work out something. And I think there's enough pressure in Israel, even though Netanyahu wants nothing to do. He wants to stay in power and keep fighting. The pressure would be so heavy if Hamas said, here, you're going to get back all your hostages. That's my thought.
Go ahead, Joel.
And all I can tell you is that I have nephews that went to Hillel, brought up in Orthodox neighborhoods. Their view on Israel is exceptionally negative. The PR that is going on, the demonstrations are working. I had a conversation again with my nephew, and he sees Israel as provoking the war. He sees, and this is coming again from the Orthodox, somebody who grew up that Israel caused the war, and that they're reaping what they deserve.
Wow.
And this is, and he's telling me, you're in your 60s, you don't know shit. Kids, 20 to 30, under 35, this is how they feel. And it was an eye-opener to me, where somebody who was brought up, Israel is the best, whatever it may be, he is completely opposed to Israel. And so the PR is working, and it's going to have an effect where Jews of 20, 30 years old are not going to be contributing to Israel like other generations. This has a huge impact.
How old is your nephew?
My nephew's 22. Graduated from college.
Okay.
And I wonder, Joel, that Israel's got a population that's I think slightly under that of the state of Michigan, and you've got a prime minister who is thumbing his nose openly now at his greatest ally and I suppose benefactor. Is that going to have a shelf life?
Oh, I think it is. What we're, at least what I'm seeing is that I think there has been a sea change with the view of Israel. I think all of these events have tainted the view of Israel, have diminished the myth of what Israel was or is. At least that's certainly the view. And Steve, I apologize for the young people. I've talked to my son. I'm telling you, it's frightening for me because but I understand it from what their history is and what little they know or whatever they know. This is where they're coming from, and it's
right. Steve.
You have to keep in mind, and we've talked about it before, that for those who are 35 and under, what they've basically seen of the state of Israel is Bibi Netanyahu and the right-wing people. Mm-hmm. And other than that very short period of time where they had the coalition government. So for young people, unless they're raised in a house where they hear a lot about the Holocaust and about everybody immigrating from Russia and Poland, Czechoslovakia, whatever, what they see of Israel is what looks to them like a police state that's infringing on the rights of other people, blah, 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 blah. So you can't be surprised. And I hear this from my children constantly. What Joel just said about his nephew, that's exactly the kind of stuff that are hearing it all the time. With people in that age group, they look at Israel. They don't look at it the way that those who are my age, who were born right after the state was created, let's say, and know that it was created basically out of the guilt of the French and the Brits because they didn't protect people and 6 million people got murdered. That's a different world than what these young people see. And I think that's something that the state of Israel, the leaders there, aside from Bibi, should recognize that, because without the support of the Americans, now you're really on an island over there, right? So that's what I think the problem is that nobody's seen the Israel that I grew up seeing, and it's just a different world.
All right, Alan, let's go last word on this one. Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying that, as Americans, look, we're all basically proud to be Americans, but when Trump is president and you travel overseas and people, we're ashamed. We're ashamed, and I think there's some of that in Israel. The same thing where people are proud to be Israelis, but they're ashamed about Netanyahu. And I was going to say, the justification, we've talked about this before, the justification is endless. We have to figure out, we have to get rid of the people who are crazy, egotistical, untrusting, and get to the second level, get rid of the top level people who are so grasping to their power, and stop saying, yes, we're justified for doing this. And we're both sides. It's an endless justification that never stops. And we have to get past that for peace to happen. So anyways.
All right. Just one piece of breaking news before we go to our last video. Looks like Steve Bannon, Trump ally, lost his appeal for overturning his criminal contempt or congressional contempt conviction. Next stop, SCOTUS. But it looks like Stevie B might be heading to the pokey. Alan, why don't we end on a bit of a lighter, humorous note?
Okay, yes. We saved some so we could all smile at the end of all this heavy.
I was a little kid when my grandfather died. I remember I asked my mother, I said, when I die, will I see Grampy again? And she said, not if you're good. Little things bothered me. Yesterday, the guy that was supposed to fix our doorbell didn't show up. Or did he? I got stopped by the cops last week. The cops said to me, you were going 70 in a 50. I said, 70 is the new 50.
All right, let's go to commercial, Alan.
All right, I think we've done the commercials. We got those out of the way, so we'll just go right.
Okay, well then, let's go right.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, plenty to go around. Joel, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to go with the attorney who was cross-examining. I think her name is Nechellis or Nechellis. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Susan Necklace.
Who was cross-examining Stormy Daniels last night. When you're a lawyer, you have independent thoughts. You have independent. You're the one who develops the tactics and the strategy at trial because Trump thinks he knows, but a lawyer who's going to listen to a client like that and just take their marching orders is not much of a lawyer, despite her reputation. And what she's doing by this constant battering and bludgeoning of a witness is you make her sympathetic. There comes a point in time where even if the witness is a piece of shit, you could ask 1 or 10 or 30 more questions. And some now the witness is somewhat sympathetic. And I think that's what was happening. The day before, what I was hearing is that the prosecutors had gilded the lily by having too much detail, but the attorneys cross-examining just emphasize all that detail. So I don't know exactly what she was doing other than following the instructions of Trump, who's a moron, and for that she's my schmuck of the week.
Good.
Hey, Bill, given the speed by which Steve corrected Joel's pronunciation, was she one of the people who called Steve?
How many times do I have to say no comment?
Okay, all right.
Can I defer or deny it?
I just want you to know I never messed around with really young girls like she would have been back in those days. So that wasn't me. That was
I can confirm that none of the women, they were all women, none of them were girls.
That's right.
And as a matter of fact, they were all pretty high class and none of them were hookers. So
that you know of.
Listen, in case there's any doubt, the green tint is true. I was truly jealous.
I've read fewer disclaimers in the fine print of contracts that have been drafted by the law firm of Sklar, Fishman, and Seikaly than what you just provided there, Bill.
Of Grosse Pointe, Michigan.
Of Grosse Pointe, yeah. Barb, who's your schmuck?
Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, who has taken upon himself to really brutalize the students who have been protesting in his city. And I think that this is another case of people just forgetting history and really using their ire in the wrong way. Some of these young people are reporting 12 hours in the pokey with no water, with no bathroom facilities. They are being handcuffed hard and they're being thrown around. Much like what Bill said about how you radicalize people. This isn't how you stop the protests, and this isn't how you get your way. All of the universities are guilty except the ones that have actually sat down with the people that are protesting, and which that way their encampments go away. It's embarrassing, but Adams has taken it to the extreme, so he is my schmuck this week.
Good.
Got it. Bill.
Yeah, talk about, you got it right, Saeed, when you said that there were more schmucks than we had time for this week.
Sure.
I originally had a fellow sheriff in Missouri who, in his own campaign, used a warrant to try and claim the ballot boxes from his own election, to try and seize those ballot boxes. There was one problem: no judge ever signed the warrant. And he caught at it. And he seemed to be a good schmuck of the week. But then there was Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I know is everybody's favorite. But for her to stand on the floor of the House and say that Mike Johnson, who I'm no fan of, should vacate the seat of Speaker because this is his crime. He worked with the opposing party. That has become un-American.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't care.
Well, no, but here's the problem. She had 10 other Republicans that voted for her. The Dems saved her. But I want to suggest this is how democracy dies. When her kind of behavior becomes normalized. Yeah. When she can stand up and at a press conference say, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And nobody stops her. He doesn't get censored. There's no consequence for this behavior. When Trump can get away with what Trump gets away with and still have nearly 50% of the election, this, ladies and gentlemen, is how democracy dies.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep. All right.
I agree.
Steve.
You guys are going to be a little surprised at my schmuck of the week, schmucks of the week. My schmuck of the week, and this is totally from a trial lawyer's perspective, is our Stormy Daniels and whoever it was in the prosecutor's office that was preparing her supposedly for testimony. I have to tell you that there is nothing worse for a prosecutor than to have to put up with cross-examination that is caused literally by the witness's inability to keep her trap shut. Okay. The difference between how she answered questions the first day and the second day suggests to me that after the first day, somebody sat her down and said, look, just answer what's asked, quit pissing off the judge, quit bringing up other stuff. And she did a lot better. My question is, in a trial of this nature, with the kind of following that it has, where the hell were they the day before in sitting her down and saying the same thing? And I will make this concession for you guys. It's rare for a government prosecutor, whether it's state or federal, to have to deal with a witness who has done anything other than maybe take a guilty plea, have some interviews with the FBI, which are then turned over. Both of these witnesses, of course, for their own reasons, have been all over television, writing books, boasting about this, talking about that, which makes it more difficult, obviously, to begin with, because there's a lot more grist for the cross-examination mill. But at the same time, to get her to answer the questions and don't give speeches, that I think all three of us of the Troika lawyers in Grosse Pointe, I think we will all agree that is like in criminal procedure 1. Right? You never let your witness run at the mouth. So, because I'm not sure whose fault it was, I don't know if she did it on her own, but she's my schmuck of the week, along with an assist from the prosecutors who didn't control her the first day.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I'll tell every witness that I ever put on a witness stand, when somebody walks in the courtroom, they should not know if it's me or the other side that's asking the questions. You ought to answer the questions the exact same way. Answer the question that was asked. Don't go into more detail until you're asked more detail.
She wanted to tell a story, though, and that's what witnesses will do if they have their own agenda. They need to tell their story, no matter how many times you tell them. Just Q&A. Listen to the question, give an answer. Some people feel compelled to tell their story, no matter what the hell is asked, and I think that's what happened.
Well, I think that's because the prosecutors decided that for them, their homework was watching the tapes. So that might have had something to do with it. Nancy.
Okay. Mine is a little more amorphous. I don't have a name, but I certainly have a deed. And that is the executives at the Gannett Corporation who fired Sarah Leach. And Sarah Leach is probably not a name any of you recognize, but she was the editor of the Holland Sentinel. And also, and this is a statement on what newspapers are like these days, she was the editor of the Holland Sentinel and 24 other newspapers in the Gannett. But because they were so insanely understaffed, she was basically the person who was covering Ottawa Impact and the rise of this crazy right-wing county commission in Ottawa County, Michigan. She did well over 100 stories in the last year. She conducted herself with the utmost professionalism. She is and of course, a lot of national media followed her. The Washington Post did a lot of work out of Ottawa County, but she was the taproot of all of that. She made the error of communicating with another reporter for Poynter Institute, which is a nonprofit that covers journalism, and complaining about Gannett not staffing the way they had promised. He published this, didn't use her name, but she believes then that Gannett went into her email and figured out who the person was who told this to the Poynter guy and fired her. And so if you have any doubt in your mind that the Gannett Corporation gives not one single fig for news coverage while they strut around with their Pulitzer Prizes and all this other shit, it's like, take that as proof that they don't. So
it was my second schmuck.
Yeah.
Still evil after all these years. Get out.
Exactly. Yes.
They went out of their way to purchase all the little newspapers all over the country, up and down the East Coast, all of the small New Jersey papers, all of the West Michigan papers, just so they can consolidate them. And so there's no more homegrown reporting anymore. There's somebody like her is such a hero for still trying to do it. Mm-hmm. And they slapped her down. It's disgusting.
The the advantage that publishers have always enjoyed in running newspapers is that people who go into journalism see it as a calling. They're like religious, they're like nuns and priests. I mean, they see this. They don't care that they don't make any money or that they make shitty money. They want to do the job, and publishers have taken advantage of that for as long as I've been in the business, and and now
read the Detroit dailies.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So there you go. So that's mine.
Allan.
My schmucks of the week are, one is Kevin McCarthy, who was just interviewed, I don't know, it was on a podcast or something, who he was criticizing Mike Johnson, for working with the Democrats, and he said that would make me sick. Well, he did work with the Democrats to keep the government open again, and then finally that was his fault. And the Democrats were like, "You're such a schmuck. We're not going to save your job." And the other one is Nathan Wade for still defending the relationship that he had with Fani Willis, and thinking like, "Hey, it's just whatever. Why is it everyone's business?" Shame on him for not fessing up and saying, "Yeah, I fucked up." So
exactly.
Actually, that's exactly what he did.
Yes, or down, one of the two.
So my schmucks, because they're involved in the same issue, are former presidential candidate for the Republicans and biotech magnate Vivek Ramaswamy and Ann Coulter. They were in an interview together, and she said that she would never vote for him because he's an Indian. That she doubled down by saying she would only vote for presidential candidates who are WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Boy, she has such Shik's appeal. But here's the thing, that she actually, if I recall, was dating for a long time a person of South Asian descent.
Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is so gross.
Ew.
Oh my God, he is so gross.
Not because of anything except his personality. Oh my God.
Well, he's kind of, as they said in Fargo, he's funny looking. Quote, there's a core national identity that is the identity of the WASP. And that doesn't mean we can't take anyone else in, a Sri Lankan, a Japanese, or an Indian. But the core around which the nation's values are formed is the WASP. And she said, by the way, to give him a little bit of an out, that if any of his kids married somebody who was of the Daughters of the American Revolution, then she would go ahead and vote for that person to be president.
Oh, wow.
He said, because, the word cuckold and Ramaswamy would never go together, I was initially shocked and for a split second enraged. But after that, I was just deeply curious, and it was a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
But hot off the presses.
Then he was trying to get laid. It's the only explanation for why he would say that.
Well, the other one, right hot off the presses as a schmuck, is the Ohio State University alum, social entrepreneur, and OSU's commencement speaker this year, Chris Pan, 46, who apparently delivered his speech while on ayahuasca, the psychoactive brew, and it was to many jeers. When apparently he also had 2 awkward sing-alongs, a Navy SEAL breathing exercise, and a magic trick, all in one commencement speech.
And a
which
pitch
shows
ball.
I love it.
A pitch
Timothy Leary was right.
Yeah.
Ohio State.
Which basically shows, though, that, in this day and age, he should have done what every other commencement speaker did, use ChatGPT. So, for that, my schmuck. Well, listen, thank you. Guess where Ann Coulter went to school? I think she went to U of M. She went to Cornell for undergrad, I believe. Yes.
I feel terrible. I feel terrible because we just went to our daughter just graduated from U of M Law School on Monday, and here she's going there with Ann Coulter.
Congratulations, Steve.
That is
Congratulations. Fishman and Fishman?
No. She went to Cranbrook, not Mumford. She doesn't know anything about street
Oh,
crime.
okay.
Well, no, it would be Sklar, Seikaly, Fishman, and Fishman.
Yeah, Gross Point.
That's assuming Nancy can get us into the Gross Point.
I can do it.
Actually,
listen,
Saeed claimed that I was in Grosse Pointe. I'm actually at the border. They won't let me in.
So that means that the road paving just isn't that great where you are, Bill? Because it changes dramatically. Well, thank you everybody for being on another episode. Thank you for tuning in, all of those that are out there. Wow, he didn't even wait for him to be thanked. Okay, thank you, still in absentia, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, and with the last word as always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
That was
Take care, everybody.
Good weekend, all.